Corrections.
Corrections.
Corrections. Corrections.
Hello and welcome back to the Prison Officer Podcast. You know, 2025 has been a busy year. I've had the opportunity to speak all over the country, from Boston, Massachusetts, Lansing, Michigan, Bismarck, North Dakota, to Ruidoso, New Mexico. And so I've got to get out. I've got to meet lots of people from corrections and interact and see what's going on in our world. And I'm happy to report that I meet a lot of great people. I'm very excited about the level of commitment that I see in the classes and that I see when I meet people, and the number of people I see out there that are trying to make this career better, that are trying to make this profession more respected in the public eye. So that's the really good thing, you know. I've got to travel around. I've been to several conferences this year. I've, of course, taught pepperball classes. I've taught command presence classes. And of course, this has been a big year for me personally as an author. So I've got to go and do several book signings and launched a couple of books this year. So that has been great. That's been exciting. That's been a goal of mine since I was young. So I really am happy about that things are moving on with that. But, you know, honestly, I think 2026 is going to be even better than 2025. And 2025 was great. On March 28th next year, that'll be the 5th anniversary of the Prison Officer Podcast. And I just want to say thank you. I couldn't have done it without you. I never expected it to become as big as it has. And I'm very grateful for the people that tune in and listen. But I also want to stop and take a minute because I'm grateful for Pepperball. You know, not only I get to be a master instructor for them, but I want to thank them. Without them and their sponsorship, this podcast probably wouldn't be possible at the level it is. You know, during my career in corrections, I used or supervised Pepperball hundreds of times. And now as a master instructor, I get to go out and teach others about the versatility and effectiveness of the Pepperball system. From cell extractions to disturbances on the rec yard, Pepperball is the first option, the first thing I reach in my correctional toolbox and bring out. The ability to transition quickly from area saturation to direct impact with non-lethal PAVA projectiles gives officers a wide range of options. And I love going out and teaching them about that and showing them how that works in a correctional environment. And you know, when the use of force is over, decontamination is easy. No oily residue on the walls or floors. Another thing I love about Pepperball. To learn more about Pepperball, go ahead and go visit them at www.pepperball.com. Pepperball is the safer option first. What's 2026 going to be like around here? Well, I can't talk about it, but I have a special project that you're going to be very excited about when I can. I'll be announcing that sometime in the second half of 2026. It's something I've been working on this year, and I can't wait to share it with you guys, but I can't do that right now. Some of the stuff I can share with you. One thing, I've been working hard in the last couple of weeks, and I will be releasing 2 books early next year. One of them, of course, is corrections oriented, and it's a book I've been working on for a long time. You may have heard me, if you were at the book launch for Power Skills, I read a little bit of it, but it's called The Weight of Justice, and it's leadership lessons from the gray line, a correctional officer's journey. And that book covers most of my career, from walking into this career blind, or what I saw, you know, the same as what you guys see, working in some of these prisons, the good, the bad, I guess the ugly. So I cover all that, and then I bring the leadership lessons that I did learn over a career. I do believe I became a better correctional officer and absolutely a better leader, and hopefully a better instructor over that time. So I share a lot of that in there, and I'm really looking forward to getting this out there. It's in the editing process right now, so I'm thinking a couple of months, and we'll have it out there, and I'll let you guys know. Another book that isn't about corrections, but it's just as important to me, is called Echoes of the Ozarks. It's a family legacy of timber, words, and art. I have a great uncle who built a cabin in the Ozarks when they came here from Tennessee. That cabin is still there. It's part of the Mark Twain National Forest. It's called the Falling Springs Mill. So if you go there, you can see the mill that my family built. You can also see the cabin. But That's only the first part of that story. The second part of that story is my great-grandmother who kept journals when she lived in the Ozarks. She was an amazing woman who saw the Ozarks and saw the birds and the animals and the flora and everything that was in the woods and in nature. And she wrote about that. She wrote poetry, and I think that's where I got some of my ability to write from. And then finally, my grandmother was a painter. She painted in oil, and she painted a bunch of the mills, including Falling Springs Mill, the first mill in our family, but a lot of the mills in Ozark County and around Missouri. She painted those, saved the history by doing that. And so I talk about that also. And then finally, I think it was 2010, ad in the paper, and is part of the Passport in Time pit project with the National Forest Service. And I signed on to do that because they were rebuilding that cabin that my great uncle built in 1851. So I got to be part of that for a week, and I tell that story in there. So it's really a family story, but it talks about how long the Ozarks and the mills and the rocks and the stones and the words and the art and how that built my family and how it has stayed in my family. So that's the other one I'm going to be releasing this year. And if things go well, I'm also working on what will be my fourth children's book. I just did a book signing last week. I'm really excited about how well these children's books are doing. I don't think that was ever in my plan, but it has been a blast doing the book signings, going out and seeing the kids, watching kids enjoy what I wrote and read it over and over again. So that's been really special for me. Now, I don't do this very often, but I am going to take just a minute, and I'm going to ask you to do a few things to help me keep this podcast going. And before you get scared, not everything involves money. If you would like to donate to keep the podcast going, you can, of course, go to www.theprisonofficer.com or go to the YouTube channel for theprisonofficer.com, and you can follow the links to Buy Me a Cup of Coffee. And it gives you some options there where you can take a few dollars and give it to the podcast, Buy Me a Cup of Coffee, and show your support. So if you'd like to, that's a great way to do it. Second, on YouTube, if you would click subscribe or like, we're getting close to 500. I'd really like to get that goal because that goal helps us helps us monetize the channel and move up on the ratings. And so we've got that goal for the podcast. So if you could subscribe or like when you're listening to our podcast, I would really appreciate it. And if you listen to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or any other platform, clicking like or subscribe does make a big difference. It makes a difference in where we're seen in the lists. And then finally, if you've purchased one of my books, please take a moment and leave a rating or review on Amazon. I'm not telling you it has to be a 5-star rating. Tell me the truth. My feelings are okay. I was a correctional officer for many years, so you're not going to hurt my feelings. But leave me an honest review. Those reviews mean a lot to a published author, especially a self-published author. We have to do a lot of that work ourselves, and those ratings directly affect how much Amazon promotes our books, when you see it in ads, when other people see it in ads. So if you can go and leave us a rating, if you've bought one of my books, any of them, the children's books, Power Skills, Keys to Your Career, any of those books, if you would leave us a rating, that would be wonderful. So thanks for being patient with that. I really do appreciate it. I appreciate everything you guys do for the podcast. I appreciate the emails. I appreciate the notes on LinkedIn and Facebook, and I appreciate the interaction that I get to have with you guys. So now, as I looked back over the year, I realized that we had an incredible lineup of guests this year. When I started this podcast, I never imagined that I would get to speak with some of the people that I spoke with this year, or that I would get to learn at a level. I know you guys learn from this. I know you love hearing from the leaders, but I started off doing this so that I could learn. So I could learn from people who had done it, leaders, directors, wardens, great instructors. Those are the people I wanted to engage and learn how to make what I did better. So I've put together some of our best conversations from this year. No, I didn't get to everyone, but the links, I'm going to go ahead and put links in the show notes in case you missed one of the episodes this year. You can go to the show notes and you can click a link there in case you missed one of them. But I did highlight a few here. So let's start with Greg Williams and Brian Marren from Arcadia Cognorati. That always takes me just a minute. They are the premier instructors worldwide when it comes to human behavior, pattern recognition, and analysis. I love listening to them talk. So much of what they teach has to do with corrections and what we do, and they help us put a name to a lot of the instinct, that what we call it instinct, but it's not. It is human behavior pattern recognition. And so I had them on the podcast. They were on podcast number 100. These guys have literally wrote the book on this subject. And so let's listen to what they have to say.
I'll say his name because everybody knows him. Old Smitty. I got old Smitty that said, don't touch the radio. Don't touch the car keys, and don't wake me up. And that was it. You know what I'm saying? It's like, okay. So we sat behind the fire station, and I watched the stars go by because I was like, man, there's all those wonderful radio runs. Can I be out there? Nope, because I was with the wrong guy. But what your guy told you is a scientific principle, and I want you to think about that. Don't watch the watcher. So let's just talk about that one thing that he said, Michael. Okay, so your brain is set up with your eyes giving you a visual field of your environment. Okay, your eyes have a 6-degree or an 11-degree functional field of view, boy or girl. And when you scan your environment, you're looking for light, motion, and edges, things to attend to, right back to attention. So that person that's watching is a lookout. So what you do is you draw a T, okay, making the T go across his shoulders and down from his head and orient what he's likely looking at. Now you draw your 6 or 11 degrees out from that, looking from overhead, and you go, okay, he's watching out for the guards. He's watching out for the other gang. He's watching out for the person delivering whatever, okay? So who's watching the watcher? Who's paying attention to that person, and what's going on where he's not oriented to? Because that's where the people are hiding in plain sight. That's where they're building the shiv. That's where they're hiding the bootleg liquor or the drugs. And so what we do is exactly the same thing that you do. We just do it in a different baseline, in a different environment. So our baseline can change anywhere. It can be in a room, like an interview room. It can be in a factory. It can be in a vehicle bay. It can be out in the rest of the world or on an airplane. Well, that's no different from you. You've got people that are in charge of transferring prisoners to court, back and forth to different prisons, in and out of a jail cell to, for example, the infirmary. And what happens is each time you go from one threshold to the next, you have to recalibrate your brain and go, okay, now I'm on the floor. Now I'm in general population. Now I'm coming into an office setting. Because if you don't, what's happening is you're not preparing your brain for likelihood, those things that likely could occur. And that's just being alert and aware. But your whole body is fighting that. Your whole body is saying, go lay down, have more food, go to sleep. You hear that alarm? Don't worry, it'll go away soon. So to be that good person, to be at the top of your game, you have to fight what's hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years of the sedentary mindset that you're in, and embrace what all humans have been given, and that's the ability to alert to certain cues in your environment. So Brian gave you one. We're wired to look at other people and feel their emotion through our mirror neurons, okay? Which means that if you're happy, I'll be happy. If I want you to be happy, I should be happy, and you'll be happy too. Okay, that's great. But the other side of that same coin is danger. We've been given the innate ability to sense danger in our environment, and we talk it away. We say, oh, the hair on the back of my head stood up. Oh, I got this hinky feeling. Brian mentioned it, the spider senses. Look, I'll bet you talk to all the people that you work with routinely in prison officers and staff and administration, and everyone will be able to tell you a story about how they knew the crap was about to go sideways because of a sound or a sight or a smell. So you said earlier about when it gets real quiet, back to the wall. I'll tell you, you want to predict an ambush in combat? Radio is going to either go absolutely dead or it's going to spike. It's going to be all this rapid transmission. You're not going to understand it. And that's going to be the atmospheric shift just before the ambush. Or it's going to go dead quiet and everybody's going to go, hey, did you hear that? Yeah, exactly. And now you're going to get the ambush. So it's the same human behavior rules, let's call them, and it's the same interaction with humans. It's just on a different baseline level. So I would agree with Brian, you've got it much harder because you've got less flash to bang. You've got it much harder. We give the gift of time and distance, which means the more time you have to observe, the farther you are away from the incident, the better you have it. So you're actually right up close and personal almost all day long. So I also know that you have surveillance units. So that's how you can offset that, right? By watching and listening. Because I'll tell you one thing I'll tell you before I'll end my rant here, Michael, is that coppers on the street have the red and blues. They also have a siren, and it gets them into more trouble because you know what they do? They race into a situation without giving it enough time for the brain to consider what might be happening. Your folks, even when you go to, hands-on or less than lethal, at least you can sit back for a minute, take a look and assess what's going on and say, I can compare that to this person's previous behavior or to that wing at that time during the day or night or something. With police work on the road, that tends to be a little more random. Do you understand where I'm going there?
Absolutely. Yeah. And we also have the ability, most of these big prisons have 1,000 cameras, right?
Yeah.
So I've got guys who are intelligence specialists who are
Right.
watching the camera and can give you information while it's going on with a whole different viewpoint.
Right.
So
Yeah.
let me ask this, and Brian, on your website, and it kind of leads into what Greg was talking about. You talk about humans have devolved, and I think prison, we get to see some of that. Can you talk to us about how humans have devolved?
So what we kind of mean when we say that is, our ability to sense, make, and problem solve, our ability to understand and read and interpret the environment has devolved, and that's over the course of human history. It's a slow process. It's been accelerated by newer technology, us staring at a phone or screens and stuff like that. Meaning there's less sort of human interaction out in the world today. Even with like kids, and so we don't learn as many of the lessons that we do anymore. And so we're kind of so used to now, is there an app for that? Or is there a technology for that we're missing a lot of cues right in front of us. Now, and take that to a prison, a little bit different, in the sense that now you're all reliant on just that, on just how someone looks, how they walk, where they walk, who they go and associate with. That's how it kind of all used to be done, right? In a sense, like in how tribes and humans and cliques and groups would interact with one another, right? We look for familiarity, and so we find comfort in familiarity, and so we're always going to look for something that, and it's just part of the reason why all humans set patterns. So every person, whether you're an inmate or you're a corrections officer, like, you're going to set a pattern. You can't not do it. It's what your brain wants to do. It wants to burn less calories. So it's going to consistently do the same thing over and over again once it finds a way to do something by burning the least amount of calories. So what we look for is like, okay, you're going to set, that's just baseline behavior. And then you kind of, if there's deviations from that, there has to be a reason. There's some catalyst that caused you to do something different today. No one just randomly goes about their day and their business, like, unless there's like, mental health or drugs or something involvement, meaning we all set those patterns. So what, specifically what we talk about with a prison is like, it's that petri dish. It's that a science experiment, because there's only so many things you can do. There's only so many things you can do during the day, or so many places you can go, and there's different, informal rules in prisons, all over the place of who can hang out with who, and who belongs to what group. And, they might not have a lot of say about that when they come in, but it's going to formalize very, very quickly. And so that creates its own ecosystem. And so what a lot of people try to do is say, here's some things to look for. You got to watch out for this, or you got to watch out for that, or here's some pre-event indicators, or here's some a threat indicator, or here's something. And that's all good. But actually, you go back to even what your story from when you first got there and someone showed you, it's like, get really, really good at what's normal, what's typical, what should I expect to see. The better you get at that, the better you get at reading and understanding a baseline and knowing what normal is, the easier it is to spot what those deviations are. You may not know what it is, right, or what's going on, but you'll be able to recognize it. So like when I'll go with different groups, whether it's like a task force or police officers doing whatever, or a military unit, and they're going, okay, well, we got this. We kind of look for these things. And I'm always like, well, stop, hang on. Don't tell me what you guys look for. What should I expect to see, right? We're out on the surveillance thing. It's 2:00 in the morning. These are the people. Like, what what should they be doing right now? What's normal for them? And they go, well, normally they're doing this, normally doing this. Okay, great. Because now I can spot, well, that's not normal because you said that. And they're going, shit, that's right. He must be up to something over there. I didn't even see that. It's like, because you get so used to looking for all of these different things, like you kind of, there's some cognitive biases that will take over. And now you start to see things that that might not actually be there in a sense. But what you have there with that ability, especially in the daily routine, is like, and Greg was kind of talking about this earlier, is your brain wants to know the answer before you get to it wants to know the rest of the sentence or the paragraph before you get to the end of it, right? So it'll fill in words. It doesn't want to be surprised. So it'll write things off, or not attend to certain things because it's like, nope, I know this. I've been in here 100 times. I've got this. So what we try to really get people to focus on is sort of that anticipation, right? So you go, all right, before I walk out here, what should I expect to see? What's normal at this time on this day? Whatever's going on, because 2 p.m. is different than 2 a.m. Monday's different than Saturday, whatever. Like, you have to just know, like, what is typical? What should I expect to see? And then once I place myself in the environment, the things that aren't typical, they're going to just pop out to me right away. And now I can start to determine, okay, well, why is that? And I can start to sense make a little bit and try to put things together and go, oh, shit, this is now escalating. That person never sits with that group. Hang on, they should be over there. And you know what? Wow, now that guy, he never stands over there. He's always over there with that group. Okay, I'll stop right now. Now we have something before it escalates into whatever's coming next.
Wasn't that great? Yeah, absolutely. I was also thrilled to have Myles Cook on the podcast. Now, Myles and I work together at Command Presence Training. I love listening to him instruct. I'm a huge fan of his classes and the way he reframes problems to turn them into challenges. I've learned a ton from Myles. So I had him on here. Myles is the training coordinator at Walters State Regional Law Enforcement Training Academy. He's a member of the Tennessee Corrections Institute Board, TCI, which does amazing stuff for Tennessee. And he's also a competitive shooter. So this guy lives and breathes training. In this conversation, we're going to talk about what he learned in corrections that helped shape the rest of his career. Thank you, Myles.
When I got there, I was fit. I had a formal education. I was ready to roll, or I thought I was ready to roll. And I get into working into corrections. And all right, first thing, I remember it vividly. I remember the guy's name and everything. It's all right. We're gonna search this guy out before he goes upstairs. The whole squat and cough, and that whole kind of thing. And he was about 6'6", gangly, and had been stabbed in the throat, had some metal in there. And I got very nervous, and I figured out very quickly the skills that I was missing in talking to people. And it was a real awakening moment for me in corrections, and then into my patrol and law enforcement career. That I was not as ready as I thought I was.
Mm-hmm.
And I have always held the belief, especially in Tennessee with the sheriff's offices locally where corrections and patrol divisions are shared, that if you want to learn to get good at those power skills, like the book behind you, there is no better world than corrections. Absolutely. And so I know for us, and in some ways in my instructor development, that's what you're going to develop the problem. Then we're going to work on a problem statement, right? I don't care. I don't care if the problem is I want my line of shooters to be faster at firing their handgun, or I've got a cultural problem, or how do I get the older people in my agency to get excited about training, or I'm burnt out and I'm ready to quit. How do I fix it? I don't care what the problem is, right? It's not mine, it's yours. Right. So I just want to kind of help you look at it differently, or see if we can find an answer. And we were able to do that. And I do think taking, obviously, what they need into account is important. I know for that instructor development, and I'm sure you sit through a ton of them. I know I have a lot of times, the end is a 5-minute presentation on whatever you pick, and it's, how to apply a tourniquet, or, maybe something with pepper ball, right? And so you kind of deliver that for us in our instructor development class. When you sit through the leadership, and you sit through the problem solving, and you sit through the verbal and nonverbal communication, we have some really killer exercises for that. They're just amazing. And you sit through all these things, what you're working toward is actually solving the problem. Then you go through a day of trying to solve the problem. And then your exercise at the end is a 15 to 20 minute presentation on how, based on adult learning, based on all the things we went through, how you plan to fix that problem. And so what you leave with is a packaged 15-minute pitch to your administration on how to actually fix the problem.
Nice.
So it's worked really well for us. But, I don't think it's just training. I think there's some good examples. Like in the law enforcement world, we want to reduce foot pursuits. That sounds great. I would ask you, is that the actual terminal objective? Well, the actual real objective is probably to reduce the liability associated with foot pursuits. Well, that's gonna end up in a different answer.
Another highlight for me this year was Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman. Now, Lieutenant Colonel Grossman is an author. He's a trainer who conducts seminars on the psychology of lethal force. Okay. He's also a retired lieutenant colonel in the United States Army. I've read several of his books. I love them all. I learned a ton, and I don't know that I ever expected to have him on my podcast. So I was absolutely thrilled to have him on the podcast. In this episode, he speaks to the role of corrections as a public servant and why what we do truly matters.
Have you ever heard if you truly love something, let it go. If it comes back, it's really yours.
Yep.
That's how much God loves us. He loves us enough to let us make our own decision. That means a lot of people make really bad decisions, and a lot of really bad things happen. And we say, God, why don't you do something? He said, I did. I sent you. You are his agent. You are truly God's agent to do good in this world, to give people a second chance, to carry people off the streets. You are truly a public servant.
Yeah.
And I talk in my presentations about the opposite of evil. What's the opposite of evil? The opposite of evil is love. Evil's absence of love, just as darkness absence of light. And Jesus said, greater love is no one than this, that they lay down their life for their friends. But listen, here's the key. There are many ways to lay down your life. There are many ways to lay down your life. And sometimes the greatest love is not to sacrifice your life, but to live a life of sacrifice. And that's what corrections is. Nobody's in this job to get stinking filthy American dream rich, No. Nobody's in this job to be a famous celebrity, at least not legally,
Right.
When you chose this profession, you really chose, to a certain degree, you chose a life of sacrifice.
Yeah.
And we must believe your sacrifice for a noble and worthy purpose. And so we began by talking about facing violence and how most people are not wired to do that.
Right.
But when you face that, you say, I faced that violence today, so my children didn't have to.
Another one of my guests this year was retired Bureau of Prisons Associate Warden Pete Bloodworth. In this discussion, Pete tells us about what it was like walking into one of the toughest prisons in America, Marion, Illinois. So he's got a great story here. And by the way, Pete and another guest from this year, Chris McConnell, have started their own podcast called Corrections Unfiltered. So be sure and go to YouTube and check them guys out. But here's Pete.
Yeah, it was a jump because I'm coming from, like I just told you, where they hug it out, shake hands, and swear they'll never talk mean to each other again. Marion is an institution where they had 3 tragic murders of staff members, and 2 staff members were murdered in the same day. And the staff members who were there, if they weren't there in 1983 when that happened, they knew they were carrying the baton for those staff members. And so when you got there, they didn't disrespect you, but you had to earn the respect and show that you were there for the right reasons.
Right.
And only until you prove that would they embrace you with caution, because you came in as a leader and they knew that you could come in and disrupt a lot of things. And it wasn't anything other than the fact that you had to believe that you were there to safeguard not only them, but the BOP, because that's where the top tier of bad guys were at.
Right.
Unlike the ADX, it still had the open bar concept. It still had the old locks where you had to select the doors and pull the levers. It wasn't push button and stuff like that. You didn't have sally ports at every cell to protect you from when they came out of the cell to a cuff port. It was you're right there with them. So if they didn't like you, things came flying your way. And that was brought to me one of my first nights there. They called me down to segregation and said they had a guy who was a little upset. Can you come talk to him? I get there and I'm like, what's going on? They said, well, he's down that way. and I like cell 17 of 18. So I walked past all these open bars to get down to the cell. And there was a guy, and I had seen rage before, but not like this. And when he threw his radio at me, and it was a good size, it was a wood box radio. And that thing disintegrated and just came flying by me, and he let me know that he was going to kill me. There was no doubt whatsoever in my mind he could make that happen right there.
Yeah.
And I realized, I'm in a whole different place now.
Okay. And finally, one of my favorite guests this year was Jimmy Cummings. Now, Jimmy spent a lifetime working in corrections with the United States Marine Corps, and he has the stories to prove it. What you're about to hear is one of those stories, and it also became a viral hit for the podcast. So I hope you enjoy it.
Bad luck. And then he had another inmate, because we had the two prisons. So this one inmate gets out through the mess deck, and he jumps in a dipsty dumpster. You know what dipsty dumpster is? The dipsty dumpster is those big metal things that they throw garbage in and everything. Big, enormous garbage can, with thick metal and stuff. And they have to use a special dump truck that comes down. It's got like a forklift, and it lifts the dipsty dumpster up and dumps it into the garbage truck. So this inmate, he gets in the dipsty dumpster because he knows the guy's gonna come. He's in the dipsty dumpster, so the garbage truck comes in, it puts the forks in, lifts it up, dumps it in there, and now the guy that's driving the garbage truck, he pushes the button to compress it. Now this guy's in the back there, right? And he's compressing. He's lucky he didn't compress it all the way, but he's crushed in there with all the garbage. So he leaves the gate, the compound, but what does he do? The garbage truck goes to the other brig, pulls into the compound. By the time this inmate works his way through the garbage to get out, he jumps out and he starts running to find out that he's in the compound of the other prison.
It's a lifetime of stories there.
Oh, there's you too. You got some stories.
Well, that's it for this year, folks. I hope you enjoyed it. I wish each and every one of you a Merry Christmas and a happy, healthy, and prosperous New Year. I know several of you are going to work those holidays, and I appreciate the fact that you're there. Be safe. Watch out for each other. And most of all, just the reason we have this podcast, I want you to remember that what you do and how you do it matters every day.